Hey friends, Katrina here with Homegrown Florida. Last week we talked about our 2023 goals and saw how successful we are. So at the end of that video, we did talk about the 2024 goals I had for my garden this year. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to convert those goals from just goals or desires or wishes into an actual spring garden plan, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, my entire mindset. We're actually going to plan my entire spring garden together today. It's going to be a little bit different than my past planning videos, because in my past planning videos I kind of already planned it myself, and in this video we're going to be doing it together so that you can see exactly what goes into my mindset in terms of what vegetables I'm going to grow, where I'm going to put them in the garden, how many plants in that particular space. We're going to talk about all those things, and hopefully this will give you guys some ideas and maybe jumpstart you into getting your spring garden planted. And I know it's pretty crazy because it's January and we're talking about a spring garden planting, but spring is different for different places, right? Really, okay, the full definition of spring has an actual date. But here in Florida or our southern states, our spring planting time is based on your last frost date. And for those in southern Florida or in other areas that are completely frost free, you don't even have to worry about that. You can pretty much grow spring, fall, and winter all through the winter. My goal is to get all my spring vegetables in, growing, and at a mature state before March or April at the latest. Once you start getting into late April and early May, it gets horrific here in terms of bugs, humidity, and the heat. So not a lot of things really want to grow once you get into those particular months. So that's why we're planning all the way back here in January, and we're starting seeds too. It's not just planting. We are planting and then we're going to start those seeds immediately. What we're going to talk about today are warm weather crops. I'm not going to be focused on the cool weather crops because there are still some that will grow. I mean, you can start more broccoli, kohlrabi, some kale, that will go the distance. But for me personally, you don't have to take this stance, but for me personally, once I start getting into spring gardening, I stop all of my cool weather plants except for lettuce. I will continue to grow lettuce just because it has such a short days to harvest. Radishes would be another example of really short days to harvest. So those things you can keep growing, no problem. But, broccoli, cauliflower, those longer season crops are going to have a little bit harder of a time as we move into spring, and they are not going to taste their best, which is one of the reasons why when I start spring gardening, I stop doing a lot of the cold weather crops. So keep that in mind. Your list of vegetables might look different than mine because you do include cold weather crops. I don't normally do this, but I wanted to do this because I thought this would be the easiest way to show you what goes on in my mind. So I basically took all those crops and I put them on index cards so that we can do this organization that I do in my mind, this hierarchy that I do in my mind about the vegetables. So we have our goals, and these were from the 2024 goals, and those goals include a 1-year supply of potatoes, peas, and hot peppers. There were a few others on that list, like onions and roselle. However, the onions are already in the ground. Those are cool weather crops, and the roselle is what I call a hot weather crop or a summer crop. So I didn't put that on our spring goals. I'm narrowing down all those millions of goals we had for 2024 into what are the goals specific for spring. The next one I had was growing more flowers, and in particular a lot of perennial flowers. I got a friend of the channel, Bill, thank you Bill, sent me a ton of seeds and they're starting to sprout and I'm so excited. And a lot of these are perennials, some are self-seeding annuals. So I want to grow them. They are a little more rare, they're a little more different, and I just love the flowers. So I'm very, very excited about that. The third goal is more medicinals. I want to be able to make cough drops and vitamin gummies. So this is going to mean that I need to grow certain kinds of medicinal plants for me to be able to do these things. And then the last one is preserving. This is a whole theme for my year of 2024, is to find how to preserve the things from my garden in the way that we love to eat them. So two of the things I'm going to be focused on are tomatoes and then whole meals. And whole meals are going to be mainly for the freeze dryer. And I'm going to try my best to use as many vegetables that come out of the garden to make these whole meals. Although I will have to supplement and add meat from the grocery store. Now that we have our goals, now we need to talk about which vegetables we want to grow. And so I wrote down dry beans, green beans, corn, cucumber, eggplant, melons, peas, peppers, potatoes, summer squash, winter squash. Let's make sure we have enough room here. Tomatillos, tomatoes, and watermelons, if you can see all of those. So the way that I organize this first is by goals. So my goals say I want potatoes, peas, and hot peppers. So I'm going to take the cards for potatoes, peas, and peppers. And those are going to be in my absolute must grow category. I'm going to put them right over here. The next item that was on our goals was flowers. We're going to talk about that separately. And then medicinals. We're going to talk about that separately because medicinals for the most part tend to be flowering plants, not all the time, but tend to be flowering plants. So I'm going to put those together. The fourth goal was the tomatoes and the whole meals. So tomatoes are making it on our #1 must-have group. Now what we're left with is all of the vegetables that didn't make it into those goals. And then what I want to do here is pull out the ones that I know I don't want to grow because I know we're not going to eat them, right? Eggplants. I don't like eggplant. Don't like eggplant. Nobody in my family likes eggplant. Nobody I know likes eggplant. I can't give it away even if I were to grow it. So it's just going to go in the compost bin, and that is a waste. So I'm not going to do that one. I'm also not going to be growing summer squash, and the reason why is my Trombacino squash did so well. I have it in canned foods, I have it dehydrated, I have it freeze dried, I have it powdered into a flour, I have it frozen. It is in every space of my house. I do not need to grow any more summer squash. So summer squash is off the list. Of the ones that are remaining, okay. Oh, corn. This one I have been debating about whether or not to grow it. It takes up so much space. I tried to use an organic fertilizer last year. It was not successful. So I've kind of come to the consensus that I want to take a break off of corn for a season, which is really a year because I only grow corn in spring. I feel like it does best in spring. You can grow corn in fall. I don't, just because of the wet weather. Spring we have drought, so it does a little bit better for me, but I just need a break from it. Honestly, I've been successful with it with synthetic fertilizers. I've not been successful with it with organic fertilizers, and that's not an end all be all hard line for me. It's just at this point I'm just kind of frustrated with it, and there's a farm literally right down the street that gives out bushels and bushels of corn for a very cheap price. So I think I'm going to focus my efforts on getting my corn from them this year so as to have as much space as possible to grow all the other things I want to grow. So corn is coming off the list for me. All right, so that's what we have left. Now I'm going to put them in order of which ones I want to grow the most versus the least. So this is a hard one. This is really hard. Okay, I definitely want to grow melons because I have a really cool melon variety that grew unexpectedly. Winter squash. I really love that. Dry beans. Then tomatillos. I have some cool varieties I want to grow there. Probably cucumber, watermelon, and then green beans is the last one. So this, by putting them in order, I now know that when I fill out my organization of where everything's going to go, if I don't have room for green beans, they end up getting knocked off the list. But for now, they're on the list, but they're at the very bottom, and melons are at the top. So we're going to put these guys in that order. So we have our must-haves, absolutely need a place in the garden, and then we have our prioritized list of most wanted to the ones that I'll have to live without if I don't have room. All right, so now that we have all of that organized, let's open up our planner to the section of the planner for drawing out your garden. And that is what, for me, that's the raised bed area. If you're a container gardener, I have a green stock page for you. You could also, of course, always use the raised garden area. I'm going to show you that because I still have a few spaces that are in ground that I'm going to be growing in, and I'm going to draw that out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out what my garden looks like. So I'm going to pretend this is my whole backyard. Now this isn't going to be to scale because my garden is much bigger than the squares of this page. So if I did it based on square footage, each square being 1 square foot, I would probably end up not having enough pages, and I could always print more pages, but I don't want to have to do that, so I'm just going to not do it to scale. So this is what I call bed 1, this is bed 2, bed 3, bed 4, and then all along the top here is bed 5, bed 6, bed 7, bed 8, and this guy over here is going to be bed 9. Over here I have my palm tree. Here I have my green stalks. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have 1 right here, which is my strawberries. My next step in the process is I'm going to write down anything that is in the garden that I know is not going to move. So over here I have onions. They're not going to be ready by the time that the garden is ready for all the spring plants to be put in, so this space is off limits. I also have garlic. These are my elephant garlic right here. Here's my regular garlic. And I think I have actual potatoes right here, so I'm going to leave those. Over here I have carrots. And over here I have perennial onions. In bed 3, there's nothing there that should be there. Bed 4, there's nothing there that will be there. Bed 5, that's mostly brassicas. They'll be getting done. Bed 6 has, along the back edge here, has some flowers. And they should last the entire season, so I'm going to leave them. Bed 7, I have some medicinal plants right here. So I'm going to leave that spot as not able to be used. The rest of bed 7 is good. Bed 8, there's a couple peppers there. Honestly, I don't think they're going to make it through the season, so I'm not going to worry about those. And bed 9 is some greens that should be gone by then. In the green stalks, I have a green stalk that is herbs, and they're perennial herbs, so that one's off limits. I have a green stalk that is a warm season experiment that I'm doing, so that one will probably still be in play. This one is strawberries, and then down here I have some pineapples. It's not taking up the whole space, but it's taking up enough of that space. All right, now that we have the spots of the garden that are not able to be planted in because there's stuff already in it that will still be growing by the time these guys get in the ground, I'm going to now focus on my 4 most important, and that is going to be potatoes, if you can see that, peas, peppers, and tomatoes. So let's start by thinking about what these plants need. All right, let's put those up there. So I have a trellis on this one. I have stakes, bamboo stakes on this one, and that's pretty much all the structures I have. Potatoes don't need a structure. Peppers can do fine with just a stake or maybe even a tomato cage. Peas need something to climb, and tomatoes need some sort of support, and quite a bit of it actually. So let's see here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add chicken wire across these 2 posts, and I'm going to plant tomatoes in this bed. Now last year I planted tomatoes in this bed, and I planted 15 tomato plants, and it was like a bug haven. So I think I'm going to do a little bit less. This bed is 8 feet long, so technically it could have a tomato in each square foot, but I'm going to go a little bit yet less, and I'm going to put 5 tomato plants. And it's mainly because I want them to be rather bushy, so I'm going to do 5 on one side and 5 tomatoes on the other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as those tomatoes grow, I'm going to attach them to this chicken wire fencing that's going to be up attached to my 2 or my 4 bamboo stakes. That means that the center of this is open, but that only means I have 10 tomato plants, and I know I want more than that. So I'm also going to put a tomato plant here and a tomato plant here, because there's a trellis, and that trellis stands up right here, and I know that those tomatoes can crawl up the trellis, but I'm only going to do 2 so that I can grow other stuff in the center here without them shading it out. And I think that's it. Well, no, let's do 1 here and 1 here as well on each corners of those trellises. So we're going to end up with 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 tomato plants. So our tomatoes are done. Now let's talk about potatoes. I think for potatoes, I want to grow them in a bed that they haven't grown. They've grown in this bed, and they've grown in this bed. So I'm going to grow them here. They don't really need anything. This bed doesn't have anything. So let's put our potatoes here. And I'm going to do 1 per square foot, which means 32 potatoes because it's 8 feet long by 4 feet wide. 8 times 4 is 32. That gives you 32 square feet. The peas are a challenge because the peas need a trellis. And so I think what we're going to do is I am going to build a trellis, like a lean-to type trellis. I actually got one for Christmas that maybe I can put together, and we can use this kind of like a V structure with a netting over it. And so we'll put our peas here all throughout this, and then this will leave half the bed still open for other things other than the peas. The peppers I want to grow in a different bed as well. They have been growing in bed number 8 for a couple years, and I like to get them moved. I'm actually going to put my hot peppers here. I don't need a lot of space for them, but that will give us probably, let's see here, 6 square feet. And I can do 1 plant per square foot, so I'm going to have 6 hot peppers. Now for the sweet peppers, I like to grow lots of sweet peppers. We're going to move them over a bed so that they get a new fresh soil that has never had peppers in it before. So we're going to put them in bed 7. And we're just going to use stakes. And I can probably get, I really don't need a significant amount. I have so many that I harvested this year. So I don't need a full bed, so I'm only going to do half the bed. So that would be 4 by 4, which is 16. 16 square feet, 1 pepper per square foot. All right. Now let's talk about our next in line, which is the melons. Melons like a lot of sun, and they like their own bed. They do not do well with other plants. So I am probably, this is going to be tight. You know what? Those melons were really small, and I bet you they could hang on this trellis. So in the middle of these 4 tomato plants, I'm going to put the melons right here. They can climb up this trellis and hang from the trellis, And since they're not like a huge watermelon or like a huge winter squash, even the huge winter squashes do really fine on this trellis. I think that these melons will do great. And getting them up off the ground is always a good idea because of bugs. But now that leaves us with, what do we do with our winter squash? Well, this worked so well last year that I'm going to do the same. And I'm going to put my winter squash over here at the palm tree in between the pineapples, and we're going to grow them actually in the ground, and they'll climb up the palm tree. It worked amazing last year. We're going to do it again this year. There's a little bit of a risk of putting them in the same exact spot that they were last season, because any disease or pests that exist in that soil will still be there. I'm not rotating them, but they were really healthy and they didn't seem to get a lot of pest activity in this area. So I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope for the best, but I might be eating my words later. Dry beans. Most of my dry beans are bush varieties, not necessarily vining. And the couple that I do have that are vining are not like super viney. So I think I'm going to put the beans in between the tomatoes here. And there's a couple reasons why I'm picking this. The first reason is this is going to be dead space, and it's going to be really hard to reach this space. When I put these chicken wires on either side, I'm going to have to be leaning over here or leaning over here to get to anything in the center of this. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge harvesting anything that's sitting in the middle. The good thing about dry beans is you want them to be completely dry. So by the time that they are ready to be harvested, I can just cut the whole plant, pull it out, cut the whole plant, pull it out, and then harvest the beans. So I'm not going to be sitting there fussing with it throughout the year. They can just grow in the center undisturbed. All right, tomatillos. Tomatillos are a fairly bushy plant and they need a tomato cage. So I'm going to put them, I think I'm going to put them right here. I'm trying to think because they do get kind of tall and bushy, but they're not going to be taller than the tomatoes, and they're not going to be taller than the melons because the melons are going to grow up over this trellis, so it shouldn't shade them out. So let's put our tomatillos right here. And this will be a 4x4, so we're talking about 16 plants. Next up is cucumbers. Since I'm pretty much out of space that can grow upwards, I'm going to have to grow bush cucumbers instead of vining cucumbers. And vining cucumbers tend to be better, but you know, bush cucumbers, they'll produce what I need them to produce. I'm not trying to grow a year's supply because I have a ton of pickles still in the pantry. So the cucumbers I'm going to put over here. Cukes, I can't spell. And I'm only going to use a quarter of the bed. So that's a 4x2. So that's only 8 plants. All right, next up, watermelons. 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 Oh, okay. So with the watermelons, we're going to try here. I got a little spider growing water. Now I say try because this is a fairly shady bed. During summer, it gets way less shade. But it is an entire bed. And in an entire bed, the most I'm comfortable growing is 2 to 3 plants total. That is in 32 square feet. I only want to grow 2 or 3 plants to give them air to grow and everything. And I'm probably going to grow a smaller variety. We're going to see how this goes. I'm hoping that by the time these guys are starting to grow and get big, that the sun has moved in the sky so that this bed gets more light, because it does get more light during the summer. We're going to see. Green beans. I would love to grow green beans over in bed 9. However, they don't like shade. They really don't like shade. So where can I put my green beans? I guess my only spot is right here. They're able to be accessed. They're a bush variety. This bed 7 gets enough sun that I think that they'll do okay right there. And we'll have to test that theory. I do have this whole bed right here that's open. What else? That's it. Oh goodness. Okay. So this bed right here is going to end up being my flowers and my medicinals. along with, I'm going to call them FM, along with these 2 green stalks are also going to get my flowers and my medicinals. That fills up my entire space, all my gardening space. It's pretty crazy, but that's going to be a lot of vegetables. That's going to be a lot of food. We hit all of our goals. I'm happy about it. But now let's talk about what varieties I'm going to be growing, because I know that that is always super important too. And I'm going to show you my tried and true versus my new experiments. But before we jump to that, if you're having fun with this, if this is helping you be able to plan your garden, your spring garden, make sure to head down and hit subscribe. That way you don't miss out to see how all of this does, like whether those watermelons are going to grow over in that shaded spot or not. So hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Now let's talk about varieties, because I did go ahead and pull them all out. We're still sticking to vegetables. We're going to talk about medicinals and flowers in just a second. So we're going to start with the beans. I have these in alphabetical order. Yes, I am that OCD. So for green beans, I'm going to grow Provider and Contender. Provider I've grown for years. Bush Lake is a really good one. Weirdly enough, I've never grown it. I just have never gotten the seeds, mainly because Provider does so well for me. But I also have these Contender beans that Elise with the Urban Harvest sent me, and so I want to try these. Besides those, for dry beans, I have 4 kinds. I have a cranberry bean that I like to use as my white bean or navy bean. It kind of reminds me of a cannelloni or a navy bean. Those are mine that I have saved. I have a kidney bean. These are mine that I saved as well. It's a light red kidney bean. And then I have little red beans. I really love these for chili. I saved these myself as well, but that's actually what they're called, a light red kidney bean and a little red bean. For cucumbers, all right, cucumbers, I went with just straight bush cucumbers, no vining. So I have the Bush Champion, the Space Master Bush variety, and then the Pickle Bush. So I'm going to grow those 3. For the melons, I am going to only grow the cantaloupe that grew in my garden last year. I don't know where this cantaloupe came from. I have no idea what variety it is. My best guess is that it's a Sweet Kiss cantaloupe. The only reason why I'm guessing that is I don't buy a whole lot of whole cantaloupes. That's the only way a cantaloupe would have ever made it into my garden, other than an animal pooping it out, is if it came from my compost bin. And so then I had to think back of when have I bought cantaloupe where I bought the whole cantaloupe and not like cut up pieces from Publix. And the only time I ever bought one was like a few years ago, and it was a Sweet Kiss cantaloupe. And this is actually the seeds that I saved from the actual cantaloupe that I opened. I bought a few of them. I saved seed from one, and the rest of them I ate, and whatever seeds were left over went in the compost bin. And that's how I think maybe these guys made it into my garden. Either way, I know for a fact this is the variety that grew in my garden last year that was amazing, and hopefully it's true to seed. We're not going to know for sure until I grow it what kind it is. Well, I'm never going to know what kind it is, but I can tell if it's going to be true to seed or not based on how these guys grow. If they grow like they did last year and they taste like they did last year, it's a true to seed. Otherwise, it's a hybrid, and who knows what I'm going to get, but I'm willing to chance it. It's a fun experiment. For peas, I'm going to grow the Sugar Prince, and this one is a new one. I've grown this one plenty of times, and this one is new. It's called the Tall Telephone. Tall tells me it's going to get tall. So we're going to grow those. For peppers, I have so many peppers. Let me, oh my goodness, I have so many peppers. Okay, let's take a look at these. I'm going to try the Keystone Giant. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to try it. The YOLO Wonder, it does great. I've tried that one before. Cubanellas, star of the show. This will produce an abundant of sweet peppers. I'm probably going to grow several of these plants. I'm going to grow some Anaheim chili peppers for my hot peppers. I'm gonna go some purple cayenne peppers for my hot peppers. I'm gonna grow some poblanos. And I'm also gonna grow, I think that's the last of the hot ones, right? Yes. I have an order in for some jalapenos. As you know, I don't grow a lot of hot peppers, so I had to order jalapenos. For sweet, I have some pimento peppers. I'm gonna grow some of those. A friend of the channel sent me a bunch of really, really cool varieties of peppers. I'm not even gonna try to say them all, but Lesia, Suave Numex, Ajavarski, just destroying these names. Chilla de Cancino, Chachupa pepper, I know how to say this, Alduche pepper, and then a blanco pimento, or a white pimento pepper. I'm also going to do Arzo con Pollo and the yellow monster. So a lot of these are sweet peppers, and a very small amount are hot peppers. But remember, our hot peppers are in a small space, and we're only doing 6 of them. And then the larger space has 16 square feet, so I'm going to do 16 of those. So those are going to be the sweet peppers. For the winter squash, I'm only going to grow 2. I'm going to grow the Seminole pumpkin and my favorite, the Burgess buttercup squash. I didn't have a great season in fall for this one, so I'm hoping that spring will do it better. And I think it will. The pest pressure will be down. For tomatillos, I am growing several. I got some cool ones. So I have the pineapple saved from my garden, pineapple tomatillos. I also have the Aunt Mary ground cherry, and then I have M.I. Gardner's pineapple tomatillos. Honestly, I think they're all probably about the same variety. I think they all seem the same, but I want to grow all the different kinds to see if there's a difference, because like this guy right here in the picture is very, very orange, and the ones I grow are more yellowish. So I'm curious if it's just like a variety thing, or is it like a my garden type thing? I don't know. So we're going to try those. But for typical tomatillos, I'm doing the verde tomatillo, and I'm also doing the purple tomatillo, mainly just for color. I think it's cool. I've grown the verde before. I have not grown the purple. Now let's get into tomatoes, because I have to narrow this down somehow. I would love you guys' help with this. I have to narrow this down into which tomatoes I'm going to grow, because right now we said that there's 14 that I can grow, and I'm fairly certain that this is more than 14 varieties. So this year when I grow tomatoes, there's 2 types of tomatoes that I'm really interested in growing, right? That I want to win, and I want to figure out what is the variety that works for me, for my garden. And that's going to be a beefsteak tomato. I have never successfully grown a beefsteak down here. I've grown slicers, I've grown cherries, I've grown currants, I've grown grapes, I've grown slicers, I said that. And I've grown paste. But the beefsteaks have never done well. They've grown and they've gotten destroyed. So I'm going to be starting these now, because I need them to grow large. So the Blvd is a really interesting one, although I have no confidence that this is going to do well down here. There's nothing about this one in the description or anything that I've read about it that tells me it's going to do well. But man, is it not the most beautiful tomato. So I don't know if that one's going to make the list. Mortgage Lifter is a type of beefsteak tomato. Brandy Fred Dwarf is a beefsteak tomato. San Marzano is the other type of tomato I really want to focus on, which is a paste tomato. And I have a couple other paste tomato varieties that are going to be coming in the mail here shortly. I'm trying to find the very best paste tomato with the highest productivity. I've grown them before, just not at a very high productivity. So I've got a few of these coming. I know, which is crazy because I still have too many. The Homestead 24 is a standard slicer for me. The vintage wine just looks cool, but I don't think that one's going to make the list. We're going to see. Rutgers, everyone says, is a strong slicing tomato. The Oxheart, one of you guys told me, worked really well for you. I tried it 1 year, didn't do great, but I don't know if that was just me. The Atkins is a good slicing tomato. These next 3 here, I think there are 3, hold on. There it is. 4, actually. 4 tomatoes are current style tomatoes, and I need to pick which ones to grow. I really need you guys' help with this. So the red currant was amazing last year. Very productive. Tastes amazing. But then they have the currant in an orange, and then they have the currant in a yellow, and I'm like, oh, that sounds so good. And then there's a honeycomb hybrid, which is a golden orange tomato. So I don't know. I like the idea of the hybrid because it grows in cascades. The one downside of the currant, the red, what is it called? The red currant tomato, is they don't grow in trusses. They grow in like everywhere. And so you're constantly like trying to pick them off. But I want maybe a currant tomato that tastes just as good that grows in a truss or a cascading style so that I can clip the whole thing off instead of going out there trying to pick through all of that with all the bugs and everything we have here. Florade, solid slicer tomato. If everything else fails, I know that one's going to do well. Better Boy hybrid. I believe this is I think it's a beefsteak. Then we've got the Brandy Boy hybrid. That also I think is a beefsteak. Neptune, another really good slicer. Now this one was sent to me by a friend of the channel. It's a purple heirloom tomato that she grows in her garden. And I really want to try this one. She says it grows amazing for her. She's basically created her own tomato brand because she grows this one, and I don't know if it was an heirloom. She got it from a farmer's market, and she's grown it over and over in her garden, and it grows really, really well. So she's naturalized it to the Florida area. So this is going to go on the list for sure. So if you guys, off of that list of all the ones that I did, or maybe some that I didn't mention, if you think that there's some that should definitely make it to the list and some maybe that shouldn't make it on the list of the 14 that I can grow, definitely give me a shout out. Now for the watermelons, okay, I have a golden midget, which is probably not going to make the list. Golden is golden on the inside. It's not red. And my last orange one didn't taste all that great on the inside. The Georgia rattlesnake, I believe, is very large, so I don't know if this one's going to make it on the list, but this one definitely is. And this is the Sun, Moon, and Stars. And I absolutely love this variety. It grows very well. It's outstanding. Taste-wise, it's really good too. Highly productive. So I'm definitely growing this one. So those are all of the seeds that I'm growing from a veggie perspective. Now let's talk about flowers. These are all the flowers that Bill sent me, and they're all different kinds. There's rain lilies, there's petunias, there's bachelor's button, there's Confederate rose, or paper flower I think it's called, the larkspur, the blackberry lily, and the ponciana. So these are all ones that Bill got me that I am going to try. And I actually already have started them. Here's all the flowers and medicinals I plan on growing. And I'm gonna have to narrow this down too. So I have echinacea. I have one perennial that's in my garden that I'd like to grow more of. Calendula, cumin, still not successful. Chamomile, bee balm, borage, milkweed for the butterflies. This is not going in the beds. This is going to go in the native garden section. I'm going to try straw flowers again, against my better judgment. Nasturtium. Then we're going to get towards the later part. I'm going to get into a bunch of sunflowers. I have a velvet queen. I have a lemon queen. I have a multi-head. I have a sunspot. I have a mammoth. Yeah, that's it. And then I have Cosmos, Sensation, Picote, apricota. Then I'm getting into all my zinnias. Now I have a bunch that I had saved myself, and these are multicolored giant zinnias. And then I have the queen lime zinnia. Those are all the ones that I'm going to grow. So those are all the flowers that I'm planning on growing, along with a bunch of herbs. I'm sure that there's probably some more herbs that I didn't mention, particularly for the medicinal side. I've got to go back through my seeds and see if I'm missing on anything. The next thing we're going to talk about are companion plants. I know, it's like, is there any more room anywhere to grow anything? Yes, there actually is. And it's going to be around the bases of a lot of these plants. So I'm going to focus on the ones that I know have pest issues. That's going to be the melons. The melons, I'm going to grow marigolds underneath them. Marigolds and probably radishes. Now, I don't expect these radishes to bulb up. I don't expect that. What I'm using them for is for their greens. The greens of radishes apparently deter squash vine bugs, and so that's going to go underneath the melons and underneath the squash over here. Both radishes and marigolds help with that. Now, the marigolds also help with root knot nematodes, and since I'm growing my winter squash in the ground, in the actual ground and not in a raised bed, I am sometimes concerned that it is going to bring in nematodes. I know I have a little bit in my yard, not a lot, but a little bit, and so I want to grow the marigolds around the winter squash. The other one that I'm concerned about are the tomatoes. I have found that one of the plants that works so well in deterring the leaffoot bugs and the stink bugs in my yard are onions. Now, I already grew all my onions over right here. But what I'm going to grow in that bed is some green onions. So I'm going to plant a bunch of green onions down at the bottom of all these tomato plants. I don't even need them to harvest, but if they do come to harvest, that's great. I'll pull them up. But the main purpose here is to deter the leaffoot bugs. Next to probably, let's say, the potatoes, we're going to grow some parsley. So in the corners, I'm going to grow parsley around the potatoes. I'm not really concerned about bugs with the potatoes this time of year. I'm mainly growing the parsley for the swallowtail butterflies. I have a lot of swallowtail butterflies in my area, and they really love the parsley, so I want to grow them a large amount. I do it every single year for them to put their babies on it. And then the other one is basil. And so the basil, let's see where I can put the basil. I think I'm going to put the basil over here by the hot peppers. Although basil, I mean, hot peppers don't really need help. They grow just fine without, no bugs really bother them for the most part. And if they do, it's like, it doesn't matter. But I need a place to put the basil where it's a plant that kind of lifts up, and the basil can grow underneath it to some point. And a lot of these, like the cucumbers and the green beans, are short, along with the watermelon, are all short. And I don't want the basil to grow up over the plant that I'm intending to grow. So I'm going to put it underneath my hot peppers, because I know my hot peppers I'm going to let kind of get tall. Now we have everything listed. We know exactly what we're going to be growing, what's going to be near it. Now what we have to do is schedule what grows when, or when I need to plant them. So I need to start with my longest season plants. And the longest season plants are going to be tomatoes and then peppers. Well, and watermelons. So I'm going to do tomatoes first. And then I'm going to do peppers. Then we're going to put watermelons. There's some of these that I can't grow until our last frost date has passed, which for me is going to be right around the middle to the end of February. And that's going to be the green beans, the watermelons, the cucumbers. Oh, I forgot the tomatillos. Those take a while as well. The dry beans, winter squash, and melons. A lot of these actually. Okay, the peppers, peas, potatoes. Now these guys, the ones that I was putting on my left, a lot of these can be started in trays, or they can be started in the ground while it's still kind of cold before a frost. Like the potatoes aren't going to mind that, and the peas aren't going to mind that. The ones over here on my right, they are ones that need to be direct seeded into the ground. So they need to wait until the frost date has passed. So we're going to focus on the ones that don't need to wait first, and then we'll jump to these. So the tomatoes are going to go first, and I'm going to sow those seeds as transplants, and I'm going to start those now. Same with the peppers. So I'm going to get all of those seeds started literally this week. The tomatillos we're going to do next week, and they're going to be transplants. The peas and the potatoes, we're going to go ahead and put those in this week as well. But the difference between the peas and the potatoes is those are going to be direct seeded. Now let's add the rest of them. Melons, winter squash, dry beans, cukes. We have watermelon on there and green beans. The watermelons, I'm not going to start until 2:15. Same with these melons, 2:15. Winter squash, 2:15. The dry beans, I'm going to start probably 2:07 because it's going to take them a few days to pop up, and hopefully they manage well. Cukes, 2:15. And then the green beans, I'm going to do the same as the dry beans, and these are all direct seeded. The quantities, the tomatoes, we know we're going to do 14. The peppers, our peppers, we've got 6 and 16. So when you got 22, we said watermelons, we're going to do 2 to 3. Tomatillos, we've got 16 square feet. I'm going to narrow that down. I don't need 16 plants, and I want to give them a little more space, so I'm probably going to do half that. But I have 3 varieties. Let's call it 9, 3 of each. Peas, we have this whole area, which is a 4x4, 16 square feet. That is a lot of peas. I don't even know the number that would be. I just kind of space them like 2 or 3 inches apart. So I'm going to put spacing 2 to 3 inches, and that'll be fine. Potatoes, we are putting those right here, and it's almost 32 square feet minus these maybe 4 square feet for the flowers. So we're going to call that 28 potatoes. The melons, we're growing underneath here. We're going to do 2 to 3 just like we would for the watermelons. The dry beans are kind of like the peas. We're going to do probably 3 to 4 inches apart. The cucumbers, we said we'd do 8 because we have 8 square feet. And then the green beans, we're going to do these 4 to 6 inches apart, however much that space allows. So now we know which vegetable seeds we need to start on which day and how many exactly we need to do based on how much square footage we gave to them in the area. So we have our goals. We have our schedule of when to plant, how to plant, and how many to plant. And we have the layout of what it's going to look like. So you can literally take this document out to the garden with you with your seed packets. I just grab my little basket of seeds and I grab my little chart and I walk out there. This week I'll be doing a bunch. Then the next time frame is going to be February 7th. I'll be doing a bunch. And then the next one is going to be February 15th, and I'll be doing a bunch. And then I'm good. One thing I really like about spring planting is there's not a whole lot on here that really do well succession planted. This is kind of like get it planted now, so that way by the time the heat comes on, these guys will be ready to harvest. Now, of course, you can succession plant whatever you like. I just personally, in the springtime, don't necessarily do it. I do it a lot in summer and I do it a lot in winter, but not necessarily for spring and fall because I'm looking for the big harvests and not necessarily like a little bit over a longer period of time like I would during winter with my lettuce. So I hope this helped you walk you through how my mind works when it comes to planting my garden, and now how easy it's going to be to put my plan in place. I really only have 3 days I need to start seeds or plants in the ground like potatoes, And then the rest of the time it's just cultivating, right? It's just feeding them. It's, you know, spraying them with some hydrogen peroxide if they look like they have, you know, a little bit of powdery mildew, or fight off some fungal infections. It's really straightforward for me once I get my plan done. And as you can tell, this baby took us, with filming and everything, an hour or so to do. So an hour done now is going to save you a ton of time later. If you're interested in doing the same kind of planning that I did, you can get my garden planner ebook down in the description below. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to the link. It'll ask for your email address and it will send you a link to this PDF and you can print it out. I have mine printed. They don't come this way. They're an electronic book, but you can print it out and you can give it a shot yourself and see if this method of planning works for you. Hope you enjoyed spending time with me as much as I enjoyed spending time with you guys today. Happy gardening and good luck with that spring garden.